Rachel, and then in front.
I'm Rachel, and I go to BJA. My question is, you both spoke rather negatively about the Islamization of the government and the military, and at one point even interchangeably used the word Taliban and Islam. I want to know how much is that the U.S.'s issue, that we are pretty intolerant of Islam and our inability to distinguish the two, and to what degree would we be having this conversation if it were, let's say, a Christian group?
Let me just, I'm going to let you address the intolerance issue, but let's make sure we're defining the terms right. There are, and I do a chapter on Islamism that's separate from my chapter on Taliban, because Taliban is more of a geographic location, the frontier area. But Islam, you have apolitical Islamists, Tabligh, Deobandi. These are religious groups, madrasas. Then you have political parties like the Jamaat Islamiyah, JI, and the JUI. These are political parties. They never get more than 25% of the votes, but they can be coalition partners, particularly for Nawaz Sharif government. And finally, you have the radical movements. But even the radical movements are not just Taliban. I just mentioned one called Lashkar-Taiba. They don't have much to do with Taliban. They're a Punjabi group that's fighting India and Kashmir, and also linking up with Al-Qaeda internationally. A big threat. They're the ones, when British Muslims come to these wannabe jihadis come, these 20-year-olds, they're the ones who put them in the right camps, who train them, and then they filter back into the UK. And then we have a 7/7 bombing.
Not only is the notion of Islamism very fragmented and stratified, exactly as Jonathan has described it, and if we were to go into more detail, even more so. But we wouldn't be describing Islamization or Talibanization in quote-unquote negative terms if it didn't reflect what the majority of Muslims fear about these other Muslims in their own country. So I'm not Pakistani, I'm not from Lahore, but I'm telling you that if I were, I would probably be using the same language and vocabulary. There's a part of it, in fact, is not only the fear that people in the main Pakistan, the reason I use that term, I'll clarify in a second, but the reason that they speak in those terms about the other Pakistan, whether it's Pashtuns or Taliban Pashtuns, and as a sort of parallel system, is precisely because over the last several decades, particularly with the anti-Soviet war, the creation of, the inflow of Afghan refugees into NWFP, the overpopulation that has taken place in that region, the failure of public services there, then the creation of the Taliban, all of those things have come together and led to the NWFP becoming an area that most Pakistanis and Punjabis no longer really even recognize, even from when they were children. If you were in your 40s or 50s, you would think of Peshawar as a place that you used to go to, for picnics and for Swat being considered the Switzerland and sort of resort spa type place for Pakistanis, and now they can't go there anymore. The country is no longer recognizable to themselves, and therefore they use precisely this language to describe this fearful Islamization and Talibanization of the country, which many people grossly regret has taken place.
It seems to me that you're describing a creeping civil war that is almost inevitable in Pakistan. So I have two questions, or maybe more, about that. There's Russia with a considerable Muslim population that from time to time makes noise. There is a Chinese Muslim population, which is, the lid is being kept on them very firmly, but the Chinese government is clearly very much concerned about them. And there are other countries, India certainly, with its enormous Muslim population, is certainly a country that's just not going to stand by and watch this happen. because that would lead to a fragmentation in India, which would be intolerable for most of the Indian population, I think. That is, if you broke away the Muslim population from the Hindu population and had this kind of separation as one had in the 40s. So it seems to me that this is the first step in a terrible kind of a civil war in maybe half the world, which sounds very frightening to me. Now, the other question that I'd like to bring up is that I heard part of Obama's talk the other night, and some reporter asked him about how, you know what I'm going to say, about the nuclear bombs and how secure he feels about their safety. And he said, with a very straight face, I am perfectly secure that these bombs are perfectly safe and we have nothing to worry about. Now, how can he possibly make such a statement? I mean, it sounds inconceivable to me that he can read the future and he knows these two guys who are standing there, at attention with their little rifles to defend these nukes. I mean, it's unbelievable because if these people do get hold of the nukes, then there will be Sharia law in Great Britain. I know they're pilgrim, and in other places in the world.
I tend to agree with your second question. I gave a couple talks in Israel on this issue. Of course, the Israelis, when they look at Pakistan, they see nukes. They don't see anything else. And I gave a speech which you can see on YouTube if you put my name, Jonathan Paris Proliferation. But my conclusion is that what's really a danger is not a bomb, because they don't keep the bombs assembled. To my knowledge, they're disassembled. It's not a scientist like A.Q. Khan giving secrets. It's fissionable material. That is material that's in the process of being put in a bomb, but it hasn't been there. If that gets out, that could be highly dangerous for terrorists, for Al-Qaeda, or for anybody to get a hold of. But I really think that the Army and this group within the Army is so good, and it's the one good thing that they've come up with at protecting the secrets, that I don't think that what you fear is going to happen.
But a large part of the Army is also Islam.
Ma'am, we have a number of other questions.
And there is a danger, of course, that people will, within the Army go bad. But I think this particular group has checks on that, and I'm confident for now. But the other point that you make, I'm going to let Parag, I just want to say on civil war, we seem to be waiting for the good Pakistanis to stand up against these people like the Taliban, who recently flogged a 17-year-old girl for consorting with, for talking to a person with whom she didn't have a familiar relationship. The fact of the matter is that in Pakistan, a lot of people have trouble fighting fellow Muslims. It's a problem. They're comfortable fighting India, they're comfortable blaming America, but they're not comfortable fighting other Muslims. And until there is a greater sense that there is an extremist threat, they happen to be Muslims, but they're dangerous, that will galvanize people, the good people, the people mainly the educated people, but also the people in the middle class who have a stake in the system, to rise up and insist that the government throw these guys out.
I'll just add that when you're waiting for the good Pakistanis to rise up and defeat, that is, you're waiting for Godot, because what happens in all such situations, is that the elites flee the country. And I can give you very, very, very personal examples of people I know who are buying property in foreign countries right now.
But also it's a very small elite, a very small educated population.
Yeah, it's a smaller, quote-unquote, secular, Sufi-oriented core than anyone thinks it is, and it's certainly not one that's going to stand up and fight anytime soon.